Here it is, folks. It's season 11, episode 26 of the Ubuntu podcast, everyone's favourite Linux and open source podcast that actually features 24.7% Ubuntu. In this episode, we're going to be discussing our OggCamp road trip, and we'll also give you some GUI love and go over your feedback. I'm Martin, and joining me this week are Mark.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how you doing?
None too shabby, thank you.
Good. And Alan.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm super, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. What have you been up to?
I have been upgrading RAM in a Lenovo laptop.
Quelle surprise. Is there a week that passes when you have not been shoving RAM in some ThinkPad or Lenovo?
Right, but the problem with this one was it's not a ThinkPad.
It's close
Not
enough.
always a problem, I should add.
It really is. It's a Lenovo Yoga 510-14 AST, which
Of course it is.
in a fit of pique ordered for my daughter as her laptop, and I deeply regret this. It's okay. It's one of these flip over things that has a touch screen, and yes, it runs Windows because she needs that. Blah blah blah. Don't bother emailing me and telling me she should run Ubuntu. It's not my choice. It's not my laptop. But I said I'd upgrade the RAM in it because it came with a paltry 4 gig stick. And
Oh man, she's not going to be able to run any VMs on that.
well, exactly.
Or Electron applications.
She does have Spotify installed. Anyway, I thought I'd upgrade the RAM, and I thought this would be straightforward, like all ThinkPads, undo 2 screws and pop the case off and, but no, you have to undo all these things and slip a spudger in between to prise the entire back cover off to get at the RAM slot. And then you've got to pry off one of those metal cans that covers the RAM. And there's only one slot, so I had to replace the 4 gig with an 8 gig stick, but it was just more painful. Also, the battery is like L-shaped,
Yeah.
but the bit that goes vertically is narrow and it's like empty. It's like a plastic gap where there could be more battery, but there isn't. They've left that bit like empty. There's no extra battery there. And I was infuriated to see the inside of this machine. It just angered me so much that I put the new RAM in, put the can on the top and put the lid on and gave it back to her. And hopefully it's a little bit faster. Next, I will open it again soon to put an SSD in it because it's got a very slow spinning rust and it's very frustrating. Ooh. But I did not enjoy the experience of upgrading RAM in that machine, and I wish I'd bought her a proper ThinkPad. I'm sorry, Sophie.
Is replacing the spinning rust going to be an easier bit of surgery?
A little. I still got to go through the whole screws and the spudger and that nonsense. Right. But at least I don't need to get a metal can off. There's like 3 screws that hold the hard drive in, and it's not too difficult. But it's a slim drive. It's not like your average SSD. I've got to get 7mm jobby.
Of course you do. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes.
So,
we're working in the same place tomorrow. Do I need to bring my iFixit case in for you so you've got all of the tools at your disposal, or do you have one of those?
I have the tools. I just don't have the patience.
Good answer.
What have you been up to then, Martin?
I have been learning the noble art of pugilism, but not just in the last week, for about 3 months now.
Pugilism?
You're beating people up.
Yeah, mostly, so boxing, mostly me getting beaten up, if I'm honest. I'm not very good right now.
When I hear pugilism, I think of 1980s and gladiators and 2 people standing on stalks with very long cotton bud style things.
Cotton bud, no.
This is not that, is it?
This is OG pugilism with boxing gloves in a square ring, punching each other in the face until one of you decides to give up or fall over.
Okay, and you're getting good at this, are you?
Well, I'm getting good at the avoiding being punched in the face part. And
it's a critical part.
Yeah. I'm still not very keen on being punched in the face, and I'm getting quite good at punching other people in the face, and I enjoy that bit immensely. So yeah, this is all part of. If you've ever met me in person or seen a photograph of me, you will know that I'm a plus-sized gentleman, and for various reasons, I need not to be a plus-sized gentleman, and I've been engaging in like a fitness program, and in order to make it fun, they've introduced all of these crazy different exercises, and one of them was some boxing training, which I've really taken to, and because I enjoy it, they want me to do more of it. So now, 2 days, two of the sessions that I do a week are purely boxing now, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm quite surprised because I never imagined myself as being somebody that would give two figs about boxing, but it's quite good fun as it turns out.
Nice.
So last weekend or the weekend before, it's all a mishmash of time now, the three of us, went to OggCamp, and we're going to recount some of what went on at OggCamp. So, where did the story start, Alan?
Well, first the Earth cooled, then the dinosaurs came. But if we want to skip forward a little bit, we decided to have a road trip. So we planned to all meet up, rather than all go separate ways, which we've done in the past at OggCamps. We've all gone in different cars and like tracked each other along the way. This time we decided to all go in the same car, which is your car.
It was my car. So you hot-footed it over to Basingstoke on a train?
Yeah, that's right. I slummed it down to Basingstoke and hopped in your car, and off we went.
Yeah. And from Basingstoke, in the now officially titled Ubuntu podcast Battle Bus, we then roared up the A34 to Mark's and picked Mark up at his house.
Yep. So yeah, we loaded up there, and from there we went directly to Sheffield, right? With no detours whatsoever.
There were no mistakes in the navigation of the Ubuntu podcast Battle Bus whatsoever. I totally went the right way at every junction. There was no screw-ups
What we
whatsoever.
learned on the journey, Alan and I, was that if you talk to Martin while he's driving, he can't also navigate at the same time.
Actually, I don't think that's accurate. I think it's if Martin is talking while he's driving, he can't navigate as well.
Turns out I don't multitask very well.
Yeah, even if there's a woman shouting at you in the car, telling you which way to go.
Well, it depends on the woman. In this particular case, It was a synthesized woman who I was easily able to ignore. If it was my actual wife, none of these mistakes would have happened.
Right.
So next time we need to bring your wife along to keep you on the right track.
Yeah, my podcast wives were not sufficient to prevent these errors from happening. But we did finally arrive in Sheffield, albeit maybe 40 minutes later than we intended to.
Yes, which wasn't bad going. It's quite a long way.
Yeah, and our first port of call was the venue itself. We drove up some dark back alley to meet John Spriggs and hand off a bunch of gear to John in not at all a dodgy situation whatsoever. That was fine, right?
Yeah, just he sent me an address on what 3 words, which is a handy way of directing someone to a particular place if it doesn't have a particular address. And the message was I got was along the lines of, "There's a fire escape here. Bang on the door, and I'll let you in." So we pulled up as near as we could and offloaded some OggCamp merchandise and other bits and bobs which we had from the previous year.
That was the first time in real life I've ever seen anyone use what 3 words. I knew it existed and I heard of it a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And I know it's supposed to be super useful, especially like in remote places, in far-flung places where you just don't know what the location like is called, or like you say, a zip code or postcode. But I've never actually heard it used in the UK in a place where there are roads and postcodes and names of things. It surprised me. I'm
only just finding out that we used what 3 words on that day. This is brand new information to me right now. I was far too busy in going round the roundabouts in the wrong direction in Sheffield, having recently come back from France.
It's also useful if you're at a music festival for remembering where your tent is.
Huh. Has it got that much resolution?
I think it's like 3 meters by 3 meters each square.
That's amazing. Right. What 3 words? That's something for people to research then.
Yes. So anyway, we made it to OggCamp and we went out for the Friday night pre-event social, which was at the pub about 2 minutes walk from our hotel.
That was convenient.
It was.
I appreciated that quite a lot.
There were many things that were convenient about that pub. And most convenient of all was discovering that pub resides in the future, where you can install an app on your phone, sit at a table, and without any human interaction whatsoever, have beer and dinner delivered to you at your table. It's amazing.
It's like the future.
It is excellent.
I mean, I've been in pubs before, and I've used phones before.
You surprised me.
And I've installed apps on phones before, but I've never brought those 3 things together and installed an app in a pub and used that app to order drinks to arrive and not had to move from the spot. I feel it's a slippery slope, and I could end up being sat in the same spot and consuming vast quantities of drink and food.
There is that concern, but also
yes.
I found that it dispelled with that whole "it's my round, it's your round," shenanigans that go on.
Right.
You just decide it's your round and you're going to get some drinks, and you can just look at the glasses on the table and buy orange juice and Coke and a beer and a cider, and it's done. And they turn up and everyone goes, "Oh, thank you." I loved it. I thought this was absolutely amazing. And the fact that I went there for dinner, I think twice, and breakfast 3 days in a row, because it opened at 7 o'clock in the morning, so you could go there for breakfast and even order your breakfast on the way there, intuiting which table you were going to be sitting at on the way.
I did find it amusing that every time we ordered using that app, it kept asking, "Are you really in this pub? Are you really? You look like you're 36 yards away from that pub," because the location was a little bit off.
I feel like they've done user testing.
Yes, they clearly know
before deciding how often they need to ask. Are you definitely still in this pub?
Yes, it was great. So that was the app and the pub. It was nice to meet up with a whole bunch of people before the event, and
it was
have a bit of a chinwag in the pub until the wee small hours. Some people stayed in the pub until longer than others, but that's fine. That's part of OggCamp, is sometimes you stay up late and, socialize with people you only ever interact with online. It's
sometimes
part of OggCamp, really.
Maybe if you're a podcaster and you're sponsored by a popular manufacturer of Linux computers, you might be in the pub with those sponsors for far too long into the early hours of the morning,
which
and
is
maybe
nice.
Struggle to get up the next day. Yeah,
but that's all part of the OggCamp experience.
Exactly. Yes. So, assuming you make it to OggCamp the next morning, in fact, actually, Popey, our journey to OggCamp that morning was filled with thrill and excitement, because we witnessed actual daylight robbery as we were walking to OggCamp that morning, which you rather skillfully diffused.
Not so much diffused as dob the guy in.
Model citizen Alan Poe.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's in his trousers. Is I think all I said. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, I had a stroll through sunny Sheffield and arrived at the venue, which was the rather super Sheffield Hallam University, and there were people there.
I should mention that I was already there at this point because I was on the crew, so I was.
Of course.
Right, yes.
I'd already been there to help set up.
We picked up the rear and arrived, I don't know, like 9:30, something like that. But there were people in the crew ready to receive you as you arrived, and there were a few things to look at, and there was a stall that you were behind, Mark.
Most of the time, yes. I was team merch this year.
Yes, people could buy raffle tickets and T-shirts and stickers and all kinds of stuff to support.
The venue was really good this year. We had remarkably little to do as the crew in terms of setup. Everything was there. It was slightly annoying that we were on the ground floor and the 6th floor, but there were lifts in between, so that was okay.
Those rooms were very nice. Lovely air conditioning. That was really nice. And the seating was comfy, and there were power sockets, and it was just a model venue for going and stuff like that. It was really good.
So it was at Sheffield Hallam University, and it was a I think it was like quite a modern building. Like the main room was in one of the lecture theatres, and it had power sockets everywhere and nice comfy seats, and it even had like a voting system built into the desks, which I thought was quite cool.
Sorry, I broke the one in 62E. I apologise.
Yeah, everyone pulled those out and went, what's that? And then clattered trying to get them back in again, making lots of noise.
Also, that main auditorium had a massive screen, and didn't KDE look good on that when we were fritzing around with that first thing in the morning. Brilliant.
Awesome. So what talks did you guys see?
I sat in on the first two of the first day in the main auditorium, which was what I would describe as a primer for configuration management, things like Chef and Puppet and Ansible, which was nothing new to me. But I think for those people that were in the audience that had never been exposed to that before, that was a great onboarding experience and something they could take away and learn from. And then the next presentation, I was sat next to Popey.
Yes. And that was this the one about the mainframes?
It was.
So this was a guy who was an enthusiast. He didn't have a background in computing, but he was an enthusiast and liked emulating mainframes, mainly as part of preservation of keeping the knowledge of these systems alive and being able to run the software, and talked a little bit about MVS mainframes and all that kind of stuff. Talked about where you can get hold of the emulator and the images, and basically a ready to run system so that you could just spin up a mainframe on your machine, and I did that while I was sat there. I got my laptop out and downloaded the software that he suggested and span it up, and it was quite entertaining to open up a 3270 emulator and connect to a emulated mainframe on the local machine. That was pretty good, and doing it on a ThinkPad from that era as well was quite fun as well.
Oh yes, of course, because you'd elected to go hardcore mode, and you were running Ubuntu Core on a ThinkPad.
Yes, maybe more about that another time.
Perhaps. But what I enjoyed about Jeroen Barton's presentation was he started it with, I'm going to tell you all about mainframes and I know nothing about mainframes. And then sort of went into this story about how he discovered mainframe emulation. And he'd initially started emulating mainframes on a Raspberry Pi. So if you want to find out about this stuff, then you can start at a very low, cost of entry. But then went on to say that he'd got, a bleeding edge Intel Core i7, and he benchmarked, and has since got an actual mainframe at home.
Wow.
And it was comparing, the Core i7 performance against the actual mainframe, which blitzed it by many, many, many millions of, instructions per second compared to, a modern day Intel system. So this computer from the past that runs on, dustified moths and gas was just highly performant by comparison for the task it was designed to do.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed that presentation, and I learned a lot. Even though, I started out amazingly, I actually started out working on mainframe systems when in my first job, because I worked for ICL in their logistics division, which was all operated on mainframes. But there was a lot that I didn't know that I'd never picked up. So it was a great presentation. I see he's very active in the OggCamp Telegram group now, so I suspect we'll be seeing more of Jeroen perhaps next year. Maybe a presentation on another project that he works on, which was LibrePlan, which was a project management solution, which looked very comprehensive indeed. And then following him, we watched a presentation about optimizing your images for deployment on the web and in web pages, and that was a real eye opener, because I thought I knew a lot about that, and it turns out I know nothing about that, because it's all changed in like the last 5 years, and there's a whole bunch of strategies and techniques for optimizing images for the web that I had no clue about. So I found that absolutely brilliant, and it was a very, very thoughtfully prepared presentation and really fun to watch.
Cool.
Mark, did you actually make it to any presentations, or were you crewing the whole weekend?
I made it to a few. I actually gave one, but one of the ones I made it to was a talk about jogglers.
Oh, of course, yes.
So long-time listeners to the show will know that I'm a fan of the Joggler, which is this sort of pre-tablety picture frame type device which has a touchscreen and runs Linux. And there was one of the people who works on actually porting modern versions of Ubuntu to the Joggler, talking a bit about the history of the Joggler and where it came from and why it's popular with Linuxy people, and what's involved in getting a modern operating system running on it, and what's available and where the community is and things like that. So it was really cool to see that, because I've just got one where I've sort of stuck something on it and I hope that it doesn't break next time I upgrade the packages. But actually knowing that there's ongoing community support for this sort of thing is really cool, because they're brilliant devices.
There was a fair number of talks that were like retro type things. I went to a talk by DJ Walker about his PDP-8 Pi, which is he had a small bamboo box with a Perspex front that looked like a miniature PDP computer, and inside was a Raspberry Pi running an emulator for that kind of era computer, and a bunch of LEDs on the front, so it looks like an old school computer. It was just lovely watching, how excited he was about emulating this old style computer on a PDP on a Raspberry Pi. It was great.
Yeah.
He does have an infectious enthusiasm.
Yes.
And the LEDs were driven so that they glowed like they were incandescent lamps, which was very clever. And they occasionally they would dim slightly and then come back. It was very authentic.
Yeah, that was super.
And while there are other talks that happened on the Saturday, we couldn't make them all, but I spent Saturday evening. What was the Saturday evening social? Was that at the Student Union?
Well, we started it off, of course, with an Ubuntu podcast curry.
Of course.
Yes, which was delicious.
Yeah, a break from tradition, but that was fantastic, in fact. Yeah, if you're ever in
Seven
Sheffield.
Spices Balti.
Yeah, exactly. Go to the Seven Spice in Sheffield. They were wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a jug of mango lassi.
Yeah.
That was excellent.
It was terrific.
Then we went to the Students' Union. The venue was called the Hideaway, something like that.
Hideout, yeah.
Hideout, yes. Yes, where we made merry, and I did my annual go and be sociable with people I don't know, which is what I tend to do at OggCamp.
Yeah. I did my annual Let's Talk to Ben Nuttall from the Raspberry Pi Foundation for 3 hours and find out what's going on over there. So, it's a great evening. I think most of the people that were at OggCamp during the day were at that event that night. It was really good.
Yeah.
And it was quite sticky, actually, from the Saturday to the Sunday. You sometimes see a bit of a drop-off in turn-up for the Sunday, but most people that were there on the Saturday were also there on the Sunday as well. I spent most of my Sunday in the Coder Dojo, which was run by Ben from the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and was basically a lab full of Raspberry Pis and kit and what have you, to educate kids with physical computing. And that was really great to see the enthusiasm and the smiling faces these children making computer games and making music and cooking up instruments and projectors and light shows and what have you.
Awesome. And in fact, one of the kids who was in the Coder Dojo won the laptop from Entroware in the raffle.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Yeah, that was really good to see. I did wonder if Joe was going to snatch that laptop off that child at some point in the presentation ceremony, given he was sat right next to her. But he restrained himself and was very pleased for this young girl to win the laptop. Any other standout moments for OggCamp?
Well, you were on stage.
Yes, for in air quotes, the OggCamp extravaganza, or I think as Joe has more modestly titled it, the OggCamp live show, which was really good fun to do. And for me, the highlight of that event, and also the social event on the Friday night, was that Dan Lynch was on stage with us, which was brilliant, and also was looking very well after a number of years of ill health, and it was really good to see him on good form and back to his old self again. So yeah, that was a high point for me.
So you can hear you and Dan on the others. I think Joe's published that on Late Night Linux Extra.
That's right. It's been published on the Late Night Linux Extra feed, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes for this show.
Cool.
Right. And with that, we then hurried back home on Monday morning in the battle bus, And along the way, we discovered something which we'll talk about in the next segment.
That GUI love. If there's an app that you've been using that you just have to tell everyone about, email your GUI love to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
So, as we were driving back from Sheffield, I asked Alan a question. And Alan, what did you discover as a result of the question that I asked you?
I can't remember what the question was, but let's just cut to the chase. The thing is Android Auto. It's an app that you can install on your phone. And the funky thing was I think it was an enlightening moment because it made the phone that you were using for navigation a little bit easier to use while we're driving down the road, as in nice big buttons and big user interface. And I didn't realize it was an app you could use on the phone.
So I remembered this as car mode or something from Android in the past, and it turns out it's been much refined over the years and is now an app you can install.
Yeah, and the cool thing is it's a basic interface, and then it integrates with the other apps you're using. So, for example, I've got Antenna Pod, which I use in the car for podcasts. So I can set it so that when my phone connects to my car's Bluetooth, it switches into Android Auto mode, and then I can tell it to play stuff from Antenna Pod, and it displays that in the sort of cards within the Android Auto interface with big buttons to hit. I mean, the idea is, I think, that it's meant to be a safer thing to use than having all of the apps available. It just restricts you to, you can have a navigation app, an audio app, and it'll give you notifications if you get a message, and you can just hit a button to say, go away, I'm driving. Yeah. And it'll message the person who sent you the message.
And you can also press another button to say, play that to me with audio synthesis, and then decide whether you're going to verbally respond to it. It's pretty terrific. And I didn't realise it was a thing, still a thing, and it is, and I use it every time I get in the car now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it automatically detects the Bluetooth for your stereo and turns on Android Auto automatically, which is pretty cool.
That's brilliant.
I don't have a car that has Bluetooth, so I was pondering maybe putting a Bluetooth USB stick in my car so that the phone can see that and think, oh, I'm in a car now. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to try that.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a car. Any Bluetooth device will do. So that's Android Auto.
We can never have too much feedback. Reading your feedback means that we have to come up with less content. So if you're a Redditor, you can comment on our shows through our subreddit, /r/Ubuntu podcast.
And here it is, all your wonderful feedback. Paul emailed us at show@ubuntupodcast.org.
After listening to you on season 11, episode 14.5, in which you talked about contributing to an open source project, I wanted to share my experiences with you. Like you, I found it not very easy to get a foot in the door of one of the big projects like Ubuntu, Debian, etc. Once I wanted to fix a simple translation error in a KDE program, which seemed like a very simple task, but I gave up after an hour searching how to do so. However, I found it comparatively easy to contribute to small projects with code hosted in GitHub and co. There you can just browse the open issues, fork, clone the code, fix it, and open a pull request. Sometimes there are even issues labelled low-hanging fruit for new contributors. I've done so a few times now. It's a great way to contribute back to the projects we use every day, and easy too because of the relatively low initial hurdle.
Nice. That's good to know.
Yeah, it is good to know. Dennis Schimmer also emailed us.
I have more than 10 boxes in the hands of non-technical users from half a dozen families or organizations that have been in daily use since 1604 or before. As I slowly work through the 1804 updates, I'm also switching them to always preferring snaps if they're available for any installed software. So far, it's been a fantastic experience. And since some of these I won't touch for 6 months or more, it's fantastic to know they'll be kept up to date on the most important applications. If only someone could snap the HUD functionality, which is apparently available on Ubuntu Mate. Oh, we all miss the HUD. We really do. I miss that so much. When I use the GIMP, that's the big thing I miss, is because I never know where unsharp mask is in the GIMP, and I really should learn it because it's the only thing I ever use, but I just don't. So yeah, I miss the HUD as well in GNOME.
If only snapping the HUD was just a case of shipping some software. There's an awful lot of integration that happens there. Doom Guy also emailed us.
Hearing you guys talk about Snap development and the tiny things we get to know about your work life made me want to go back into development a bit. I have been out of the game for about 15 years. I don't know where to start. The logic is all there, but the languages, I'm an old C++ and Java timer, are now different, and let's not even talk about IDEs and the like. I've bought some books. Python seems friendly enough, but what's your recommendations to delve again into development? What IDE, toolchain, etc. do you recommend for a new newbie into this?
Ooh. That's a good question. I guess it depends.
Well, I mean, there's still projects using C++ and Java.
Plenty. Yeah, loads.
Plenty.
And I guess it depends if you want to contribute to something that already exists or develop something new from scratch. You know, that will affect your direction, I guess, as to whether you want to learn a new thing and create a new thing, or learn a new thing and then contribute to an existing project. I guess it really depends on what your fancy is. You know, what do you use that you feel your contribution will be valuable to?
I think it's best for someone to decide this for themselves rather than seek the advice of others, because I think we would all choose our own languages and projects above all others because they're the ones we're most familiar with.
Yeah.
But I do need a patch for a Java project from the past. So, Doom Guy, if you do want to dust off some Java skills, drop me an email and I'll send you a project link and explain what I need help with, because it's beyond me, and maybe your old-time skills could come shooting back into relevance. Ian Forbes also reached out. Reached out? Who put that in the show notes?
Imagine my surprise to hear myself being trolled by some ne'er-do-well called Mike, who presumably comes from the internet. And all because, as a proud Brit who emigrated to Sweden, but hey-ho, I took a stand against the cultural imperialism of American business English. So I decided to action a response to Mike as soon as the issue came across my desk by reaching out to you guys. Are you chaps actually inured to the Americanisms due to your global workforce, or does it still stick in the throat a bit? I look forward to hearing more from Mike, as I want a good takeaway from this dialogue. Yours always hustling, Ian. Thank you for your communique, Ian.
Rajat emailed us with a problem.
I'm writing to you out of desperation with an issue with Ubuntu 18.04 and any distribution based on it. I have an HP Omen with a GTX 1070 graphics card. When I launch any game from my Steam library after 3 to 4 minutes into game, the frame rate drops to an unplayable in a few minutes and then returns back to normal. Then after some time, the same again. I've tried the drivers, the NVIDIA 390 in the repos, and also from the graphics drivers PPA. Ubuntu 16.04 and anything based on it is unaffected. There are no errors for me to raise a bug report. Could you please help me with any pointers on how to resolve this?
This sounds like a technical support issue for Ask Martin, a new segment that I've just made up.
So this is a good question, because if you've got an error like this and it's not giving you errors, it's just a problem, how can you go about getting the kind of information you'd need to raise a bug report?
So contacting a well-known podcast is one way. Another way, I would ask on one of the support methods that we have that we always recommend, like Ubuntu IRC or Ask Ubuntu is my personal favorite.
Ask Ubuntu. Right. Yeah, go to Ask Ubuntu, definitely, because this is the kind of, like, not easy to sort of scope what the actual issue is, but the discussion and question and answer process that happens there may help unpick what's going on.
Personally, this sounds like a cooling problem to me. Generally, when there's things that work fine and then they slow down after a while, are often because something is being rate limited or something is being scaled down due to overheating. So, like, just without knowing any more detail, my first thing would be check all the fans, make sure they are spinning at the right speed, and check the NVIDIA system settings thing and see what the cooling options are, and make sure that it is actually being cooled correctly. You could maybe put a game in a window rather than having it full screen, and have the NVIDIA settings in another window, and have a look at what the cooling does when you have the game running, and see if the temperature goes up and then the speed of the game goes down or something like that. That would be my first port of call.
There's another utility you can install called P-Sensor, which will read off the temperatures from all of the critical components on the system. Your HP Omen is a gaming device, so it should be well cooled, but I think Alan is on the money here that he's suggesting one of the fans or one of the cooling solutions is not performing correctly, and that's what's causing the issue. And perhaps pSensor will help you identify what that is. And finally, Christian sent us a command line love.
On my holiday, I went to Bali. I took 1,100 photos and forgot to adjust the clock on my camera. So all the photos were time-stamped with 6 hours in the wrong in the EXIF data. Before searching for a solution, I had this idea that I would write a script running through all the photos, correcting the error. But apparently, no need for that. I was saved by jhead with this one command, jhead, and then some options. This is why I love Linux. There's a tool for almost anything. This is really cool. I've needed to do this as well. I've got photos that really irritate me that show up in the wrong place in the timeline. I like scroll through like photos of the kids and you're going back and back and back in time, and then suddenly there's a photo of a baby in the middle of it, or there's a photo of a grown adult in the middle, and it's just the wrong time and the wrong date. So it's very useful, jhead, as a tool to manipulate the EXIF data. I like that.
Yeah, it's a great tool, jhead Time Adjust, and also in sort of early version of Android, the EXIF data was offset by 47 years. So this would be a great fix for all of your photographs that show up in your library from like the Second World War, when they're not actually from the Second World War. You can adjust and correct them. That's a great one. I really like that.
Mine are mostly because my mum doesn't know how to set the date on her camera.
We've got 2 quick follow-ups. So a little while ago, we talked about Face Punch no longer selling Rust, the game, on Steam. And one of the issues cited was a sort of jittery keyboard input mechanism laggy thing. And our friends at Gaming on Linux have written an article about how to resolve that issue. So if you're a Rust player, or maybe any other game using the Unity engine that might be experiencing this sort of jittery movement, then we'll have a link to a show note to fix those keyboard input issues. And 2 episodes ago, we talked about Akita.io joining the LVFS project, and Richard Hughes has written a blog post officially welcoming Akita.io to the LVS project. So well done, Phil Roche. You've had a positive input on the health and sustainability of the desktop Linux ecosystem for Akita.io users. We'll have a link to that as well.
As an addendum to your addendum about the Rust issue, it actually turns out it was a bug in SDL2 and not Unity itself.
Really?
Yeah, which is super interesting. So yeah, all these little components that build together and all a pile of fail at the end. So yeah, go and read the Gaming on Linux article for more details. It's really worth reading.
And that's it for our feedback this week. Right, and that's it for episode 26, a ever so modestly bumper episode.
Just a bit.
Just a bit. It's fine. We'll be back again next week when we'll have more news, comment and discussion. If you want to send us your feedback, which we love, send it to show@ubuntupodcast.org or join us in our Telegram channel at ubuntupodcast.org/Telegram. We'll look forward to hearing from you all soon.